people who love college basketball. He's a Tar Heel. I'm a Jayhawk.
We have a couple more weeks as the national champions, but this year's not looking so good. Good morning. It's great to see everyone here, and I am delighted to be a part of these conversations. It's been my privilege to get to know John Hope Bryan over the last decade, and I'm honored to call him my friend, and I have tremendous respect for this mission. That's why I was excited to be a part of this forum. The forum's attracted an amazing group of leaders and reinforces just how crucial it is for the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to come together to empower families and to help them succeed. The efforts of Operation Hope and of Habitat for Humanity are clearly aligned as we seek to build human and financial capital and to create an economy that works for everyone. One of the lesser-known heroes of Habitat for Humanity is a man named Clarence Jordan, a pastor who in the 1940s started an interracial farm in southwest Georgia. And then in the 60s, he and a small group of people came up with this idea of a fund for humanity that later became Habitat for Humanity. And he had a quote that was so far ahead of his time, just as his interracial farm was ahead of its time. And he said, "What the poor need is not charity, but capital. Not caseworkers, but co-workers. And what the rich need is a wise, honorable, and just way of divesting themselves of their overabundance." And he had a vision that everyone had something to give and everyone had something to gain when we come together. Habitat's hand up, not a handout philosophy directs us to focus on the dignity of those with whom we partner and to offer hope to those who are seeking a better life. Indeed, our mission is to bring people together to build homes, communities, and hope. And we're committed to helping people grow into all that God intends. Frank Martell is going to speak to you in a moment about the future and reimagining of the mortgage process. I want to spend a few minutes first talking about why housing matters so much. Often as I begin conversations with groups of policymakers and influencers, I ask a very simple but pointed question. How many of you grew up in substandard or poverty housing? You wouldn't be surprised to find that very few people ever raise their hand. Many times, to our surprise, housing gets left out of the conversation of poverty alleviation because it's a relatively invisible problem in our world where people are becoming more and more economically segregated. Those who have the power to affect change rarely are aware of the multitude of problems that exist when families lack a decent, healthy place to call home. They don't have any idea what day-to-day life was like for a young mother in Nicaragua I met who was afraid that her baby would experience developmental problems if he didn't crawl. However, if he moved around on the dirt floor and put fingers in his mouth, he might easily end up with diarrhea or skin or respiratory diseases. What a terrible choice for a parent to have to make. I understand that those who live in good housing conditions can't imagine the innumerable struggles that come with living in substandard housing. They can't quite grasp the idea of 15 people living in a one-bedroom home. Nor can they imagine a successful business leader in the U.S. who grew up always fearing that someone would visit his home and ask to use the bathroom. He was terrified of having to say, "We don't have one." In 2015, in the United States, nearly 21 million renters and 18 million homeowners spent more than 30% of their income on housing. 30% is the threshold that's considered to be the maximum affordable limit to still have money for all the other needs of life. The Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University also reports that more than 11 million renter households and 8 million homeowners spend more than 50% of their income on housing. Those are severely cost-burdened households. To put it another way, more than half the adults in the United States have made at least one trade-off in recent years to cover their rent or mortgage. Those trade-offs include taking a second job, cutting back on health care or healthy food, or moving to a neighborhood they perceive to be less safe. Globally, the situation is far worse. Only 1 in 4 people worldwide have lack adequate shelter. And when natural disasters or health issues arrive, those who have the fewest resources and live in the most vulnerable conditions always suffer the most. Historically, home ownership has been the best way for low-income and especially low-income minority families to build financial assets that can be passed down to future generations. Home ownership creates a built-in savings account, provides stability for children, and encourages increased neighborhood involvement. In addition, numerous studies show how important adequate housing is to better health, to improved education outcomes, and to new income-earning opportunities. It's, of course, not the only factor, but it's really a prerequisite or foundation. If you pull housing out of the equation, all of those other important social outcomes are negatively impacted. Let's start with a quick look at health. The United Nations has estimated that more than 10 million people worldwide die each year from conditions related to substandard housing. Boston pediatrician Megan Sandel tells a chilling story about the importance of healthy housing. She admitted a young girl with asthma to the intensive care unit. The child's asthma condition had previously been well controlled, so Dr. Sandel kept asking the family what was different, what had changed. It became clear that one of the changes in the child's environment was that the family had acquired a cat, even though the child was allergic to cats. So why would they do that? Because there were mice in the house. They actually found a mouse in their daughter's bed. Dr. Sandel called that an incredible devil's choice. The decision they made concerning the mice problem likely resulted in the child ending up in the hospital. Dr. Sandel said that no amount of medication she could offer would make it safe to send that child back to the unhealthy place she lived. The prescription she wanted to write was for a healthy home, which she said is like a vaccine that provides both immunity and resilience. A safe home can prevent mental health and developmental problems. A decent home may prevent asthma or lead poisoning, and an affordable home can prevent stunted growth and unnecessary hospitalizations. It's just so clear how important a decent home is to the health of a family and to the health of communities. It's not a huge leap then to see the connection between stable housing and education. Overcrowding, inadequate light, leaky pipes, and deteriorating walls at home make it difficult to concentrate. A MacArthur Foundation report said that when families lived in poor quality housing, adolescents showed lower reading and math skills in standard achievement tests. A safe, quiet place to study, however, creates not only an environment in which one can learn, but also a space in which to plan and dream. Our desire at Habitat is to help families and communities build a better future. Adequate and affordable housing creates jobs, revitalizes neighborhoods, and attracts employers. It increases consumer spending and government revenues and lowers the risk of foreclosure, all while bringing transformative benefits to families and developing resiliency in communities. Better, affordable living conditions give families the ability and financial flexibility to make forward-looking choices. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they have a foundation and opportunities. Affordable housing efforts are needed now more than ever. Habitat has experienced explosive growth over the past 13 years. We went from serving 125,000 individuals in 2005 to 3.5 million worldwide last year. And that's, thank you. So we're excited about that, but we're not winning the bigger battle. The state of affordable housing is terrible in this country and even worse around the world. The housing deficit continues to rise along with growing economic inequality. In addition, here in the United States, we've pushed equitable service workers like firefighters, teachers, entry-level government workers, and hospital service workers out into the distant suburbs in search of affordable housing, where they face the additional cost and time burdens of traveling long distances to work. This is bad for their families and then leads to additional congestion that's bad for everyone. Internationally, the workforce is often driven far from urban centers into outlying informal settlements. When the sense of community is weakened and segregation among economic groups grows, myriad social problems often come from that. So what do we do? Certainly, we need to focus on helping people acquire the skills they'll need for a new economy, as our excellent panel just talked about. But we also have to address the issues that tend to perpetuate these cycles of poverty. And that starts with housing. We've seen in locations around the world how the creation of transit-oriented, mixed income, mixed use communities with access to housing, good schools, and jobs can create positive change across a wide variety of contexts. These developments are just one example of how solving housing challenges requires the cooperation of all sectors. I want to share just a little more about Habitat's efforts to be a part of the solution. Since 1976, we've been able to partner with over 13 million people to improve their housing conditions. You might be surprised to know that more than 90% of that is outside the United States. Many people think they know all about Habitat, but the first two things most people believe about Habitat turn out not to be true. The first one is that President Carter does not actually run Habitat, nor did he start it. He and his wife, Rosalind, are our most famous volunteers of our 2.1 million annual volunteers, and their 35 years of participation absolutely put Habitat on the map, and I don't think it would have become what it is without their leadership. Another even broader misconception is that we give away houses. Those who partner with our local Habitat affiliates here in the United States purchase their homes, which are more affordable because of donations and volunteer labor that allow us to provide no-profit mortgages. We leverage philanthropic gifts to serve more families by recycling those mortgage payments in the communities and also operating over 1,000 Habitat for Humanity restores, their home product recycling stores that generated $456 million last year. Homeowners also take classes in financial literacy and home maintenance to better prepare them to be successful homeowners. And they put in hundreds of hours of sweat equity, as we call it, to earn their down payment. I was just down in Collier County, Florida, visiting victims of last fall's hurricane. And right as I walked into the local Habitat office, I walked in with a family who had just that afternoon finished their 500th hour of sweat equity while working full time. That's a remarkable investment and commitment. And I got to talk to Rolando and Yesenia, and they were going to go out now and look at lots and pick where their new home was going to be. And it's those little moments of grace that lift us up and help us see potential. In addition, we help families do repairs and renovations, and we're actively involved in neighborhood revitalization in over 300 communities across the U.S. We also help families come back from natural and man-made disasters. But many years ago, we recognized that Habitat for Humanity alone could never build our way out of the scale of the problem. So we've increased our advocacy efforts to support policies that can help remove barriers to affordable housing. We're in the midst of our Solid Ground campaign in 38 countries to improve access to land for affordable housing. And this fall, we'll be launching a U.S. campaign around affordable home ownership. To help impact the housing deficit in other countries, we've created the Terwilliger Center for Innovation and Shelter to help make the markets work better for low-income families. One of our most successful funding initiatives has been in the area of housing microfinance. We actually created a fund, a wholesale fund called Microbuild, which raised capital and debt, and we lend money to microfinance organizations to help them start housing portfolios and give them technical assistance. That leveraged fund with 10 million of equity and 90 million of debt is midway through, and we've already helped 2 million people be able to improve their housing through home improvement loans. And we estimate by the end of the fund, it'll help 5 million people. But it's a good example of convincing the market that they can actually successfully lend to these low-income families that traditionally were never served by banks. Now, I've talked about a lot of numbers and activities, But it's important to remember that every one of those numbers is a family. A family like Joyce, a family like so many that you know, who've been able to lift themselves up because they got that chance. They have the same dreams, same hopes, same aspirations as each of us. I had one of those nice little surprise moments last fall, and I was helping a relative who had to go into the hospital for a procedure. And we got to the hospital, a wonderful woman named Anne just couldn't have taken better care of us in navigating the whole process. And she saw I was wearing, as always, a Habitat jacket or some Habitat logo on me. And she said, "Habitat, are you connected to Habitat?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Well, I tell you, I moved into my Habitat house 15 years ago, and it changed my life. And I've been able to prepare for my kids, save for retirement, and be able to build a life." And there are so many Anns out there who are going to make our communities a better place if they're just given the opportunity. It is, and home's not just a repository of memories. A decent place to live creates stability, launching families into a promising cycle of possibilities and progress. Shouldn't every child have that chance?
Yes.
At Habitat, we will continue to promote the role of housing as a means for improving quality of life. We'll continue to help remove the barriers that keep families from having a safe, decent place to call home. And we will continue to create opportunities to improve their living conditions and contribute to healthy, thriving communities. And I hope in these 2 days that you will catch a vision of how you can be a part of that solution, of empowering people, about giving them opportunity, and absolutely creating hope. And that you'll feel a sense of urgency to help do your part to build strong communities where the quality of life is improved for all of our people. So thank you, and God bless you.